You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Well, welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Justin Wells.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Justin, please enlighten all these wonderful people and myself mostly about who you are and what do you do professionally?
Sure thing. Like you already said, my name's Justin Wells. I'm 18 years old and I live in Fredericktown, Missouri. By day, I work in a warehouse at a hat factory, and then I spend my evenings making custom knives.
Hat factory.
Yes, sir.
Hold on a second. So there's literally a warehouse where there's just a bunch of hats sitting around?
Oh, yeah. Yep. I'll pull orders for up to 20,000 hats, and then they go and get embroidery and ship all over the country.
Now, we say it's an inner kid thing, but already immediately I started thinking I want to try on every single hat that is in this place.
Yeah, I feel like that would get old real fast. Like once you get around the 20 mark, it's lost its
Do you come across any weird hats?
yeah. There's like some just ugly hats in that place.
Now, what do we mean by ugly? The reason I say this is because I work at a hotel and we have bachelorette parties. And the fun thing to be at a bachelorette party is not only the amount of alcohol that they consume and how crazy they can be, is the fact that everything's shaped like a dick.
Yeah, that I don't know if that's my definition of fun, but hey, you do you.
Because I'm telling you, they literally have hats. They would walk around our hotel with hats that are shaped like dicks. I'm like, she's literally wearing one on her head right now. Like, it's not even, I can't write this. You just can't.
Right. No, not that kind of ugly. Mainly just like color schemes and stuff. Or some of the hats will be made out of like a cheaper material. So I mean, they'll combine like a green and a purple and it just wonky colors.
How'd you get started into working at a hat warehouse? Does that just pop up on your desk or something?
Kinda. I graduated out of high school last year, and I needed a job. Uh, I know that I want to go full time as a knife maker, but I can't bum off my parents until that happens. So I need a good job that I can plug myself into while I pursue knife making on the side.
How did you go from hats to knife making? Did you come across a cowboy hat and decide like a knife was the way to go?
Nope. I started knife making when I was 16. So I've been doing the knife making for quite a while before I picked up uh, the warehouse job.
I mean, I occasionally made the sharp object and would, try and stab things with it. But how did you get started at 16 with knife making? Was this something that was brought in by like a family thing, or was this something that was brought
No,
in from another?
no, I just enjoyed making things. And the funny thing about knife making is it's a rabbit hole all of its own. There's all different kinds of styles and handle materials, and it's virtually unlimited what you can do within the realm of knife making.
But
And I can go down whatever path my childish brain wants to.
why knives out of everything you could possibly create as a kid? Like most people, like, a stick or, create a fire or something. Me, it was a lot of
Right.
fire.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say that fire is a big motivator. Before I ever started the actual knife making, I wanted to make a foundry that can melt down like soda cans and stuff
Oh, dude,
and cast that.
there was a kid in my class, I'll never forget. He told me he was a blacksmith, and I said, "The fuck? We're not in the 18th century." He was
Right.
like, "This is still a job." I'm like, "What do you mean it's still a job? You rip a shirt off and wear like a apron or something. You just sit at the forge all day."
Oh yeah. There's plenty of people in the country that still do that. I mean, it's more of a people. It's an art form now. It's not so much a craft. It's more of an art form that people take up, and they get big money for the work they do.
What's your process through going through making a knife? I mean, you make, I guess you would say, heirloom quality knives. So are we
Yes,
talking about
sir.
more of antique fixtured ones rather than the pocketed knives?
So I mainly focus on fixed blade knives. So I haven't got into the realm of making folders yet, but I do make a lot of fixed blades, which means that it doesn't break in the middle. So I do full tang knives. So that means that the steel runs all the way down through the handle. And my process basically is I don't do the forging. So I'm not pounding out each knife on an anvil with my coal forge from the 1800s. I use modern steels that I order in from specialty websites, and I'll cut out each knife out of a bar stock, and I'll go and shape the knife, and then I'll grind my bevels, and then I can heat treat it in a forge, which brings in the aspect of fire again, which I really like. It's almost therapeutic to be able to sit there and watch the forge. And then after that, I'll go and get everything cleaned up.
That's what I always loved about camping, was just throwing stuff in the fire, making it bigger and bigger. I remember one time I almost set my dad on fire too.
Right.
I think
And oh man, I can't even tell you how many times I've almost set myself on fire doing this, because I use angle grinders, and angle grinders are probably the most dangerous tool I use, even though they're the cheapest tool I use. Because they'll just go and launch this thousands and thousands of sparks directly at your shirt. I mean, every shirt in my closet has holes in it from where I've almost lit myself on fire with an angle grinder.
now this is a process, though. This is probably taking you years to kind of develop. I mean, you said if like, how old are you again? You said you were
I'm
16.
18.
Yeah, so you're
I'm
18.
18
Yeah,
now, and I started when I was 16.
yeah, you started when you're 16. So that's only a 2 years. So that is this just like an everyday thing, just learning the steps and kind of getting better and better at it, kind of like a routine to where now you've got it narrowed down pretty well.
Absolutely. And I'm by no means a professional, and realize that I still have a lot to learn before I can perform at a professional level. But the fact is that I've been able to progress quite quickly because I'm putting in time every single day.
Look,
I'll go out
I already know
after,
who I'm bringing if I ever get in an airplane crash and we're stuck on a
right?
straight island. Like, I'm bringing you. You're building me some knives or something.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll plan it out sometime.
Did you hear? If you ever, what made me think of that was the original storyline to Anchorman, the movie with Will Ferrell. It was supposed to be the team of news anchors were supposed to be flying in a plane, and they were supposed to collide with another plane that was filled with monkeys and throwing stars. And the basis of the movie, they were just trying to survive the island with throwing stars and monkeys. It was a crazy concept, but knife making has always fascinated me. I only really, like I've talked about it before, the influence from those late night commercials at like 2 o'clock in the morning where you're way too lazy to change the channel.
Right.
I felt
Yeah.
there was a whole variety of options too. Plus, like if you want to link that a little bit with brass knuckles, was a fascination of mine as well. I mean, the different varieties, whether you add spikes on them, the color variations, the types of steels that are using. It's the same thing when you come into a knife, but I feel like the first thing that really appeases me about a knife, much like most people, is probably the length of the blade. But on a second glance, you start looking at the handle as well.
Right, definitely. And I do think that there's like, especially in men, there's like this attraction to dangerous things, you know? And the fun thing about knives is that they're useful. So I have an excuse to carry as cool of a knife as I want, because I can hide behind the excuse that it's a tool. So you know, I can carry a big chopping knife if I'm going into the woods, because hey, I might have to use it at some point.
That's funny because my buddy, he's a big redneck guy, and we used to do jet skis all the time, and he carried around a pocket knife everywhere attached to his hip. I mean,
Oh yeah, me too.
that and a tactical flashlight. And the tactical flashlight seems like it goes a little bit too far, but you don't know how many times he's pulled us out of a jam using that tactical flashlight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I carry a flashlight on me as well, and sometimes that flashlight on your phone just don't cut it.
And a lot of people used to always say like, "Oh, Forrest is kind of edgy. He's kind of edgy. He carries around a pocket knife." And I'm like, we live in a beach town, so a lot of people are like, "How the hell? Like he's wearing jeans. We're all wearing board shorts." And I was like, "No, because that knife has came in more times than not. Like he's literally used it for so much stuff." And he's like, "Cause it's a tool." And I'm like, "Yeah, we look at it as an object or a weapon." I'm like, "No, it's a useful device." I mean, we did jet skis for a few years together, and we had to cut a rope. We had to do something. We had to get ourselves out of a jam, such as, I'm not talking about a mugging, but I'm talking about a situation where, something needed to be cut or something needed to be let free or something. Or
Right? Yeah.
one time we ran over a crab pot. We had to get the line, jump down in the water and cut it with a knife. I wouldn't have been able to do that without that.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. They're super useful. And I do think that there's a little bit of a disconnect depending on where you're at in the country. Because, like I said, in Southeast Missouri, you're looked upon weird if you don't have a pocket knife.
I feel like there's different areas where knives really apply in general. I feel like a lot of people, like when it comes to knife makers, a lot of them get sold for commercial use or home use, such as in the kitchen. And then you go a little bit farther into the realm, like kind of what you make, where you build these really giant custom knives that are they're intricate. I mean, they're intricate. They're very, very unique in each individual build, I think. Just based on looks as well. It's something that you would put in a display in your house. I really wouldn't want to use one only on the concept of they just look too damn good.
Yeah, but I mean, and that's your choice if that's something you want to do. But every single knife that I make is made to be used, and it's made to have the crap being out of it again and again and again. That's why I do what I do, because there's no greater joy that I have than to see one of my knives perform.
Now, when we talk about perform, what style of performing do you prefer that your knife be used for?
I am a die-hard hunter, so I love being able to see my knives go out and be used by hunters.
Do you sell lots of hunters, or is that your
Yep,
primary consumers?
yep.
Now,
I sell a lot of hunting knives.
are they mostly people that are in your area, or are they mostly people that are online?
It started with local people using my knives and stuff, and Instagram has been such a powerful tool for me because that has really started the spread of my knives to all across the country. I have knives that are probably represented in 7 to 8 states at this point.
And where do you decide to get some of your materials from? Like, I don't see you buying this at a hobby shop.
No, absolutely not. There's actually knife making has taken off so much. The craft has that there's actually websites that you can go to where you buy specialty steels designed specifically for making blades.
And which steels do you find that you work with the best? I feel like because there's a range, a lot of people just think of like iron and all these types of things, but it goes down to like Damascus and then all these other types that really
Right.
you
So
tend to go down a rabbit hole.
yeah, you definitely do. And every maker is going to be different. I have two kinds of steels that I really like right now. And as I progress, I'll be honest, it'll probably change. I'll probably experiment with other steel types and find something else that I like. But for the time being, I use two main steel types. The first one is called ADCRV2. It's a carbon steel, and it's just ridiculously tough. And that's why I like it. So for all of my EDC knives, for any camping knives and chopping knives, it's just a good performing steel. I have a customer that he's a hunter, and I don't typically make hunting knives out of his ADCRV2, but he really wanted a carbon steel. So I tried it, and he was able to skin out 3 deer before it needed to be resharpened. And whenever it did need to be resharpened, it only took a minute, and he still had it at razor sharp. So it's become one of my favorites as far as carbon steel goes. And then
Where
for stainless steel, I've been using something called AEBL, which is it's basically the same kind of steel that's used to make razor knives. So I really like the way it sharpens up and it polishes really, really good. So for any like clean satin finished knives, that's what I've been using.
Now, where do you come across most of your inspiration for this? I feel like a lot of these are like late night, like 2 o'clock in the morning things. They just pop into your head like, holy shit, it'd be cool. A knife with 4 blades on it instead of one.
I'll be honest, like I wish that I just had these aha moments and then out came the perfect design. But most of the time, it's just me hitting my head against the wall. I'll probably scrap 10 to 15 knife designs before I find one that I like. Before I find one that actually makes it into steel, because some of these steels are expensive. So I'll make blanks out of wood and stuff just to make sure that the knife is going to feel right, it's going to look right, and be proportioned correctly before I actually go and stick it in bar stock.
Yeah,
And
it's kind
even then,
even with
once I
the
get the
even with the expensiveness behind it, it feels like it's got to be a pain in the ass if you have to scrap a couple knives because that's a whole load of money down the drain.
yeah, I have a ammo can that I keep under my workbench, and I labeled it the box of shame. And almost there's probably 20 to 25 knives in it at this point. Man, sometimes things just don't work out. I'll screw up, and there's another one that has to go in the box of shame.
I definitely think like when you have a box of shame like that, when you look at that, it's got to be a source of inspiration as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like
I
next
feel
time,
like
let's not drink a cherry Coke while while I'm building this knife right now, so I don't mess up.
yeah, and I honestly believe that mastery is not about learning how to not make mistakes. I think that mastery is about learning to fix all the mistakes that you can make.
Well, mistakes are some of the biggest motivators. I mean, if you look through anything throughout history of any mistakes that we have made that we're making now, we're just revamping it all again and doing it in a newer way. It's like we did that 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, right. History repeats itself.
I feel like with so much that goes down to the fascination of it, like you got to put on your resume, like, hey, I'm a knife maker on the side. It's because immediately, if I own a company, you're getting hired.
Yeah, I did actually put that on the resume whenever I went to go to the hat factory. Not kind of like a wow factor, but it's sort of like a, hey, I'll be dedicated and pay attention to detail. So
Your life just solved Joe Rogan's comedy bit where he talks about what happens if all the power goes off, how long until you're able to go out into the woods or whatever, build a hatchet and send me an email. Like literally, you could make that hatchet.
oh yeah, for sure. And it wouldn't be pretty, but I could get it done. Uh,
Now, with your knife making skills, though, I have to ask just because it's me. Do you have a plan for if you have to try and survive either a zombie apocalypse or a survival scenario? Like first thing you're doing, like naked and afraid, what are you doing?
okay, off the cuff here, I gotta think for a second. I think that I would. The first thing I would do is find like some sort of concrete building, something that I could like fortify. And then if I had to choose a knife to go with me, it would be a big kukri, which is like this wicked blade. It's a big chopper, but it has like a 45-degree angle in it so that the whole front of the blade is curved forward. And that would be my zombie slaying weapon.
Dude, I saw this one knife one time that was, I mean, it looked like the size of a machete, but it looked like a shark had taken a bite out of it. So it was like circled in, like it looked like there was like a chunk missing on the inside, kind of like curved like a crescent moon, but it was
Right.
really sharp and edgy on the inside. So like if anything got cut in, it was getting stabbed or jabbed with the inside of the poking of that little curve. I was like, holy shit. Like it's just designed for murder.
I'm pretty sure that's a kukri, man.
Oh, dude, those are the best ones, I think, in my opinion. I mean, if you're going to go into a zombie apocalypse, you want to have all your angles covered.
Oh yeah, and those have been my like favorite knife for the longest time, just because like not only is it a great tool if you find yourself in the middle of the zombie apocalypse, but they have a lot of folklore and legends that go behind them because those knives were actually carried by Gurkha soldiers out of Nepal, so they're pretty legendary in the knife world.
So you probably researched a lot of information on knives. What did you find throughout, like, kind of your research or something that you find interesting?
Um, I think like the thing that fascinates me most is military knives. I like knives that have gone to war because I know that they have to be tough to be able to survive that kind of environment. So I like looking at the lines, like the shape of the blades and how they were designed. I think that my favorite war knife. I really don't know. I don't know as much history as I'd like to, but my favorite wartime knife is called a V42 dagger, and it's this small little dagger. It has like a handle that's shaped like a Coke bottle, and then the blade is just real thin and pointy. And the reason it's so special is because it was carried by the first special forces unit called the Devil's Brigade, and they carried these things, and it became so iconic within the troops that it actually is on their. I guess it's not really a logo for their troop, but I'm trying to think of what it would even be called. But basically, the Devil's Brigade is represented by this knife because it
Their
became
unit
so
name.
legendary. Right, their unit name. Right, so any picture that would have the unit name would have this V42 dagger in it. It's sweet.
Now, like what always throughout history, like when we look at blades or anything, we always relate to Chinese or Japanese culture on the basis of they always carried around a samurai sword and they would use it in dramatic acts or drastic kind of scenarios where they had to choose an honorable death or something. And I always thought that was fascinating because it seems like where our military may advance and obviously using I guess automatic guns or maybe types of military devices, there's still this classic basis for just an old blade in general because it is a tactical tool.
Oh yeah,
Um,
for sure.
I, what was your first knife? Because I've always talked about like my first knife was a really shitty like camping knife that just had like our campground kind of engraved on it. It was like a pen knife, like something you wouldn't be whittling sticks with, but I sat there for hours. trying to whittle the perfect marshmallow stick.
Yeah, and I remember this. I probably was 6 or 7. Me and my dad were out back, and we were clearing out brush and cutting wood. And he gave me a little red Swiss Army knife, and the thing was probably only 2 inches long, just a little bitty thing. And same thing, just went straight away to carving out sticks and making spears and bows and arrows and any other weapon I could.
Now, when it comes to the whole knife making process and everything, like, is there anything that you're trying to dive more into, more research? Like, I've talked to, usually when you talk to someone who does an artistry craft or something, there's always that inspiration to want to know more.
Right now, I'm really working on my handles because I feel like I got my blade shapes down, and I feel like my grinding lines are pretty good, but I'm still trying to make like the most comfortable handle that I can. Because as far as I'm concerned, the blade can be sharp and the blade can look good, but if it's not comfortable to hold and comfortable to use after you use it time and time again, then people are just going to pick up something else.
What types of things come into comfortability, I think depends on the consumer as well, right? Because I mean,
Right.
for me, I want something that's probably bigger up top when it comes to where the blade kind of goes in, and then when it comes down to the actual part where I'm gripping with my hand, I want it to be able to be kind of rigid, like you know how you have a pencil and you get the grippies to help so you don't get that bump in your finger.
Right.
I want something that's more comfortable, but also enough to where I don't feel like I can't get my hand all the way around it, but enough to where I can feel there's weight there.
Yeah, definitely, and I understand that, and it's hard, especially because like everyone's hand is different, so you have to make your handles long enough that it's going to be able to be able to fit the hand of like a majority of people, and I had to be able to contour the handle just right. So once again, 90% of the people, it's going to fit fine with, and it's a constant struggle. I mean, I had a guy out of I want to say he was out of North Carolina, and the handle was just a hair short for him. So I actually had to go and make him an entire new knife. I say I had to. I went and made him an entire new knife just to make sure that he was satisfied.
Now, I guess you really enjoy the feedback that you get from the types of things continued. I mean, have you ever decided to dive out of the knife realm and try something else like a hatchet?
I really want to make a hatchet in the future, and not necessarily like a typical hatchet. I want to make it's like they're called tactical tomahawks. So they're the kind that would be used by SWAT teams and law enforcement or even military personnel. For like a breaching tool, basically. So if they have to get into a building, a car, at a car wreck, or anything of that nature, that it would be tough enough and comfortable enough to be able to handle the job.
There's that commercial that was on Grand Theft Auto. If you turned on the TV, in the fourth one, and it's a woman selling knives, and she goes, "Look at this big ass knife." And she's like, "If you ever get stuck in an avalanche, sometimes you got to eat somebody." And I swear to God, it reminds me of those commercials at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh
They're
man, it's crazy. They're
always
so bad.
they're so dramatic.
Yeah.
It's like I got 75 million knives. I bought a warehouse of knives. I don't know what to do with it. Guess what? I could sell you all these knives for $22.99. And if you call right now, you get it for $14.99. That's 8,000 knives. I'm like, he keeps changing the number.
Yeah. How are we supposed to focus on this? I wonder how many people like actually like straight up 2 o'clock in the morning, they're calling the number and they're ordering like 18 knives.
I could tell you right now, my grandma's doing that. And I would have too if my phone was closer at the time. But, the TV was remote was so far away. It was the reason why I never changed the channel.
Right. That's great.
I feel like knife making is something I definitely get interested in, but the complexity behind it, I mean, when you start working with like a giant forge, you start having all these devices set up, it's very, very intimidating for someone that does not know what they're doing.
Right. And here's the deal is that the barrier for entry, and this is anything right now because we have social media, we have YouTube tutorials, we have the internet. The barrier for entry is lower than it's ever been. And I can tell you right now that it's really not that hard to get into knife making. I'm not going to say it's easy to go and make high quality blades, but it's not hard to get into knife making. For about, I would say $30, you could get a setup to actually start cranking out knives.
And it's so relatively cheap only because it seems like it's becoming more of a lost art. A lot of people aren't diving into knife making anymore. It seems like there's very few people out there. It's like an interesting hobby now. Most people are into the types of things we can do with technology.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think there's a definite there's a disconnect between people and working with your hands. It's a stress reliever for me. Like I do run this as a business, and I do strive to be able to grow this thing. But it's a major stress relief from life to be able to go out and to be able to build something from scratch.
What types of things run through your mind when you're creating a knife?
Um,
I
I
mean, I
man,
feel
it's a getaway. So I'll think about just life in general. Anything I can. I do. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I love music. I love being able to be able to lose myself in the project and be able to listen to to my favorite songs.
yeah, like you were saying, it's stress relief. I feel like, you get in an argument in a grocery store or something, you just come home, start making a knife. Like, this is the knife I would have used if you, you know, you pissed me off enough. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I won't go as far as to start putting people's names on it, but the thought has crossed my mind.
Have you ever made a knife just for yourself and tried to invest a lot of time in it to kind of perfect it and made it kind of something
Yeah,
that you carry around?
yep, and it's something that I need to do more. Just because there's things that like for example, the kukri. I wanted to make that knife for 2 years. Ever since I started, I wanted to make it like a legit one, and I wanted to make it to the best of my ability. And I got started on that 2 weeks ago. I actually starting to make this thing, and it's not because I have like this great use for it. And to be honest, it's probably irresponsible for me as a business owner to be taking that time to be able to go and pursue that. But it was something that I needed to do to be able to push myself forward. Because the kukri, it's a hard grind. Whenever you have a blade that's curved like that, I'm using a flat surface. I'm using a belt grinder to grind out my knives, and it's a hard grind to do. But to be able to challenge myself in that way, it was really good.
How easy is it for you to slip up and the knife snap?
The knife like snap in half.
Well, like, yeah, like, do you mess up and the blade breaks?
It's pretty tough. I use thicker steel, so it's not really that big of an issue. With that being said, I've snapped blades before, like just right after heat treat. So the heat treating process is I'll heat it up to critical temperature, which is like a glowing red, and I quench it in canola oil. And after you quench it in canola oil, that hardens the blade. And I've dropped knives before and had them snap because they're so hard. Uh, I've had knives snap like right at the tip, and that's a scrapped blade. That has to go in the box of shame. I've had blades crack on me, and those have to go in the box of shame. It's all that's the critical point of the knife making process, is trying to get that heat treat down.
It's much like a trade job. It's an ever-growing learning process. I think, do you take a lot of time to go to like conventions and stuff where they have knife makers there? And do you try to learn from more professional knife makers as well?
No, absolutely not at all. That's
Are
something I
you
want
all
to get
based on
into.
YouTube?
I learned a little bit off of YouTube. For the most part, I'm self-taught just through trial and error. I do want to get into these trade shows and stuff. I want to start connecting with knife makers, and I'm on forums and stuff where I can talk to other knife makers. But I feel like it's not the same as what you can learn in a face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, I feel like it's just so fascinating, like where my mind goes with these things. Because I've been to a couple knife halls, and I mean, whenever you go to the occasional hunting shop, you get to see the whole selection of them too, from like the crazy, ginormous ones where you're like, you're gonna carry that on your hip? How are you gonna get far? And
Yeah.
it's always boggled my mind because I wondered where people created these things and how people created and who were the people that created them, because it seemed like everyone knew like about the knife, but no one knew about the knife maker.
Right, and like I said before, like it's not that hard to get into. Like I'll be honest, it's hard to make high quality knives. Like I'm still trying to max out my potential on that front. But I started off with just an angle grinder, which is a $20 tool from Harbor Freight. An angle grinder, a clamp, and I used to make them out of. I still do every now and then, but I used to only make them out of farrier's rasps, which are old files used by farriers, and they're like about 2 inches wide, a quarter inch thick, and it's just like the perfect little canvas to be able to start knife making on. because you can go and you can cut out the shape of your knife on them, and you can grind the bevels with your angle grinder, and you can basically have a finished knife only using that one tool. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be an ugly knife, but you can still make one with pretty limited tools.
Look, it might not be appealing, but it's gonna cut some stuff.
Right. That's all that matters.
So, what's your like most memorable knife story? I mean, we could talk about like a bad one, and what about a good one?
I don't have a bad one.
You have
As
never
far as
slipped
like,
up and like cut yourself real bad or something?
okay, all right, sorry, I
Oh.
do. I had to think about it for a second. So we'll
Look,
start with the.
if I can cut myself by like just picking up a piece of wood or something outside my house to get a splinter and cut myself, I think a knife maker has to have some little bit of
Yeah,
occasion.
yeah, for sure. Here's a bad one for me. So I was hand sanding a kitchen knife, and this is kind of a bad knife making story and a bad just knife in general story. And I was using, and the edge of this blade hung over the piece of wood that I was hand sanding it on. So you have it clamped down on this flat piece of wood, and the edge was there. And the way that you hand sand these blades is you take higher and higher grits of sandpaper, and you just polish the knife back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And man, I just ran my knuckles right along that edge.
Oh
And it
man.
wasn't, I haven't even sharpened the blade yet, but the geometry was just right. And the blade was thin enough that it just sliced up my knuckles.
See, I'm from Baltimore. The most are like cuts we kind of get down here on the East Coast. It's like a crab feast. You know, you cut your finger on a crab shell or something. You get
Oh,
that
yeah.
occasional poke.
Right.
Well, my knife story is a little bit different from yours. I'm sitting here. I freeze a lot of my fruit and stuff. So I'm using a giant like a dollar knife from like the chef knife you can get from like a Dollar Tree or something. They cut
Got it.
well.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here trying to cut open this pineapple that's frozen, and I'm like putting all my weight and leaning it on the knife, and I was not paying attention, and I slipped and the blade went right into my hand, and I was like, whoa. And I looked at it and there was no blood. I was like, wow. And like my buddy's looking at me like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. He goes, dude, that scared the hell out of me. I thought I was going to take you to the emergency room. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And then I went up to kind of scratch my forehead, gushing everywhere.
Oh my
He's like, what's
gosh.
happening? I'm like, it's a delayed reaction. I'm like a squirting fountain. And I'm like throwing it all over the place. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I'm freaking out.
Oh my gosh. That's, yeah. I can tell you right now, dull knives are way more dangerous than sharp knives because whenever you go and start pushing and putting that much force on it, whenever it finally slips up, you're screwed.
My first legit pocket knife, I think though, like one that I would consider an actual knife, not something like a pen knife or something, was I watched my buddy's house when he went to Alabama to go visit his brother who was flying Blackhawks in the military. His name's Forrest.
Sweet.
And he had Newfoundlands at his house. So he's like, dude, we're going out. We're gonna be gone for like a week. I need you. You can stay at my house. You can sleep here. You can eat. You can do whatever. Just watch my dogs. Take them out. Do whatever. You know. So I would come home from school. Like it was like a senior year, and I would just drive in. You know, take the dogs out for a drive or something. And they're Newfoundlands, so they're like 140 something pounds. And they're still puppies, so they need to be, you know, playing outside and stuff. So I remember he came back in after like a week, and you know I met them at the door and everything, and then he goes, dude, I got you a gift. I'm like, what? And he hands me a knife, and I'm like, whoa. And it was a zombie hunter knife that I still have today. It literally is like the design on the handle says zombie hunter. It's one of those foldable ones. Shit is sharp as hell. I don't know how many times I've cut my, because I'm an idiot when it comes to knives. I always like to, you know, copy off of Indiana Jones where the one dude on there's flipping the switchblade
Yeah, of
back
course.
and forth. So I take the blade out, and sometimes, like the first few times, it came out so fast, it was so spring loaded, it would slice my finger open. But then I started grabbing the blade, and I would sit there trying to flip it in my hand multiple times, trying to catch it. And I remember one time I got really good at it, like where I was like throwing it up and do like 30 different flips. I would go up with my hand as well, and I would take my hand and also rotate the blade as it was in the air and then catch it. And the one time I did it super fast trying to show off, and I caught it by the blade. And my buddy just looks at me and goes, did you cut yourself? And I just looked at him. I'm like, I don't even want to look. It was one of those moments where I was like, I know it's like when you drop your phone, like, all right, I'll relate it to some kid now. If you drop your phone and it hits the ground and you're afraid to pick it up because you know the screen shattered.
Oh yeah. Yep. And same thing in knife making. It's like if I go to quench a blade, there's a really distinct sound I listen for. Sounds like glass cracking. And if I hear that sound, the blade is trashed because that means that the blade has hairline cracks all down the edge.
Now, when it comes to a hairline crack, why would that stop? I mean, I know cracks aren't supposed to be good, but is that just going to eventually break the blade if someone's using it?
Right. It's kind of like a quality control thing. I've actually had a customer. I had one, and the customer was a family friend. I was like, I'll finish it out, and you can use it. And if it ever breaks, just get it back to me. I'll make you another one. But as far as like a customer out of state, and this was an issue that I had a lot whenever I was first getting started because I was using unknown steels. Now it's something that I very rarely see because I found ways to avoid that happening. Just one of those learning things. But whenever I was first getting started, it was something I ran into a lot was having blades crack on me and stuff like that. So
You find the most important thing also keeping your mind on track when you're making a knife, but also the materials that you're using as well. I feel like if you use a steel that you don't know too much about, that it could eventually affect the overall product.
yeah, absolutely. If I don't know what kind of steel I'm using, then I don't have confidence in how that blade's going to perform.
So how
Uh,
often do you break out of your comfort zone
what do you mean?
when it comes to blade use? I mean, obviously you have to stick with a certain metal and a certain blade that you work
Oh, right,
or try
right.
and like experiment.
Yeah. So I'll order like a foot of a different kind of steel, make a knife out of it, and use it for a little bit, and just use that kind of as my experimentation process. Or if this heat treat is simple enough, or if some of the knives like stainless steels, I can't heat treat stainless steels on my own because the composition of the steel is too advanced for me to heat treat with my little forge. So I'll ship them off to other professional knife makers and I'll pay them to heat treat it for me. But on simpler steels that I can heat treat by myself, I don't mind experimenting around a little bit and then shipping them out to customers because I know that like the difference in how it will perform is not it's not going to be far enough away from what I'm already using to actually affect how the customer is like. It's not going to affect the performance that the customer is getting out of it, basically.
I feel like you have to set yourself up for a good environment when you do this too. Like you talk about going into your warehouse and being able to do this. Like I know you talk about listening to a podcast, but that doesn't distract you at all from doing
Oh
your.
yeah, and I work at my full time job is working at a warehouse. I'm not working out of a warehouse whenever I'm doing the knife making. I work out of a 10 by 10 storage shed. But yeah, if you have a clean workspace, it's the game changer for how everything runs.
Now, do you try and set your environment up to make a knife, like, or do you randomly, like, on days off or something, or when you come home, do you find that it's hard to get into the shop, even though you have to create a product to be able to go in there, only because you're just not feeling it?
I have to force myself to get in there some days, just because I know that I have people that are, well, one, I have custom orders that have to get out the door, especially around Christmas time. Christmas is my deadline, and not to mention ones that are getting shipped out. I have to have those done a week in advance so that I can have these knives that are going to be Christmas presents, have them to their owners. And then and some days like you said, I can't force myself to be creative, but I can force myself to cut out the next batch of blanks. So I do have to force myself to get out and get to work because it's not always fun. uh, but always it's not always fun forcing myself to go out there, but I always feel good after I do.
Yeah, because you look at the product and realize the time and effort that you put into it. You get to see it finally, right in front of you.
Oh
Probably
right, it's worth it. Yeah, it's worth every bit of effort.
the feedback you get from it too has got to feel amazing. I mean, the fact that like someone literally goes, "Thank you so much," or takes a picture with their kid holding your knife, and you're like, "Holy shit, that's my knife in use right now."
Oh yeah, and like I said, it's so humbling for me. And I'll wrap this back around to you asked if I had a good story and a bad story about using a knife. And my good story would be about it would have been 3 months ago. I killed a deer with my bow, and it was the first time I got to use one of my knives to skin out a deer, and it performed really well. And I'm not saying that to be arrogant, but I've worked at this for 2 years consistently, and the knife performed really well. it's a huge confidence booster, because like these aren't gas station knives. I'm not charging $15
Hey, don't knock
for.
some of those gas station knives. I'm telling you, when they are rainbow colored and they have brass knuckles equipped into the knife, I start to lose my shit.
Right, right, and I can see why you would. I'm just saying that. I mean, it takes a lot of dedication to be able to get good at this, and it was just kind of this moment to where like, holy crap, it's been worth it. I'm actually starting. It's like I say this all the time. I'll send a picture to some close friends and be like, holy crap, I can make knives. Because like, it's a good feeling to be able to challenge yourself and to meet. To challenge yourself and to surprise yourself. I like being able to push my limits.
Well, the amount of effort you put into making these things too. I mean, it's no simple task to be able to do that. Like you might chalk it up and say, "Oh, it's not that hard. You can relatively buy it for all cheap." But it's the amount of creativity and time and effort that you have to put into it is just where the real, I guess, cost comes in because it's a lot of time to be able to make a knife, and it is a whole entire mindset of it too. A lot of people, whether it's wood carving, whether it's glass blowing, whether it's just painting a picture, using anything of artistic talent, if you're not truly dived into it, you're never going to fully make a good product.
Right, exactly. And that's what people don't understand. Like any of those craftsmen that you're talking about, people always whine, and they always wonder why their product is so expensive. Especially when, like, let's say the product only took 2 hours to make. Why is it $50? The
That's
reason it's $50 is because you weren't there the past 4 years that they've been learning how to do this. You're not paying for labor, you're paying for skilled labor because it's taken them 4, 5, even 10 years to learn how to do this well.
I feel like that's probably got to be one of the worst questions that knife makers get is why does it cost so much? Why is the price so high? Like, I don't think you understand that is basically an insult to the knife maker. I mean,
Right, and here's the deal. It's like, and I used to see it like that, and a lot of the knife makers in the community do see it like that, but people just don't know. So I do my best with my customers because I get a lot of them that ask that. They'll ask that very question, or they'll try to talk me down on the price, and and I'll just have to explain it to them. It's like these are not mass produced. I make these one at a time. I'm taking time away from being with my friends and being with my family, so I come out here and make this product.
yeah, and a lot of people probably DM you like, how long is it going to take? How long is this going to happen? You're probably just like, look, man, I'm going to try my best at it. If you want a good knife, I'm not going to rush it.
I actually don't get a lot of that because I do a very good job. Social media has been one of the most powerful tools in my belt, especially with the picture settings and stuff. Whenever I'm out working, I can just take a picture real quick. I can send it to the customer every step of the way. So if you're buying a knife from me, you're getting to be a part of the process, and you're going to see every step.
Now we look at so many things you can walk around in the store, such as like going down the magazine aisle and seeing all the people that are into cars and building their own cars. How often do you subscribe to a knife magazine?
I subscribed to one last year, and it was all right, I guess. They're kind of getting sponsored by all the bigger knife companies, so it's not really a highlight of professional makers. It's more of a highlight of which knife making company gave them the most money. So it was okay. I don't think I'll resubscribe to it.
I always see when I started fitness and doing all that, I was pulling up muscle and strength and bodybuilding.com on like my phone and getting newsletters and stuff, just subscribing to it. I was like, because I wanted to dive all into it. And that's when you start to realize like a lot of it is like companies. It's not people in general. It's not, I think
Right.
we're a lot of people that are trying to aspire to become whether it's a bodybuilder or a great knife maker or anything just in a talent or hobby, they are looking for people that have been through it and experienced themselves. They want to hear it from them, not just be surrounded by a bunch of ads and stuff by companies that are just trying to sell a product.
Yeah, and once again, this is why I keep saying like social media is one of the most powerful tools that I have because I've been able to connect with other knife makers. I could find mentors. I can find people, and the knife making community is very accepting of that. There's no like trade secrets. I mean, you got people that are willing to show you exactly how they do what they do, and I'm willing to show exactly how I do what I do to people that aren't as far down the path as I am.
Now, when you think of a knife idea, do you draw this down? Do you put it in a sketchbook, or do you type, maybe kind of graph it out on a computer or something?
I used to graph it out on a computer, and I should probably get back into that. But I just kind of lost touch with it because I'm not very handy with computers. But I am. I'm slowly getting better at being able to draw knives with a pencil. So I do have 3 or 4 sketchbooks that I filled up, and most of them will never see the light of day. But I do hold on to a chosen few that'll get built in the future.
If you had any tips that you wish someone would have gave you when you were beginning, like starting knife making or maybe picking up the hobby, what would you suggest?
Um, Here's what I will say, and this is advice that I was given, and it's guided me, and it is practice, 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 practice. And that was given to me by a family friend who's a blacksmith, and you're just gonna have to keep working at it to get better. You're gonna mess up a lot of knives. You're gonna screw up a bunch, but you just got to focus on what you can learn from the process.
Do you ever get fascinated with watching like medieval stuff on television or something? I feel like
Yeah, absolutely.
when you start making knives and stuff, you're like, dude, I can do the same shit on Game of Thrones, basically.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm fascinated by like Lord of the Rings, like swords and stuff, and I get weird commissions sometimes. I got a commission for a bush sword, and people would think that that's a pain, but no, I want to make stuff like that. And I'm
Dude,
just
can I
waiting for
hold on?
someone.
Hold on. Hold on a second. Can I commission you to make me a fucking giant samurai sword?
Yes, if you're willing to pay for it.
I will pay for that sucker. I tried to get my buddy to make me a warhammer. He's like, why? I'm like, why not? He's like, what are you going to do with it? I'm like, probably some destructive shit. You don't just carry a giant warhammer and not break some things. We're talking about, I'm going out in the lawn and I'm cutting up trees. I'm doing all
Right.
this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like I'm still like as much as I like to act professional with my customers, and as much as I like to play the part of of being a professional knife maker, even though it's not my job title yet. I'm still that 16-year-old kid that started making knives. I still like making these big, weird shapes, and I have a sword blank that's sitting in the shed, waiting for some free time. I'm gonna get that knocked out.
I'm telling you, man, like if you keep this up, dude, you're gonna see nothing but good results from it. I mean, you talk about like you're not a professional knife maker in no sense of the words, but I'm like, dude, from what I've seen, you've already surpassed anything that I could possibly do with just creating a knife in general. I mean, it's not a known talent either. I definitely think it's becoming a lost art, but I feel like some of these original lost arts, such as writing, wood carving, glass blowing, these types of things that seem like it's an extensive process, aren't really truly difficult if you put your mind to it.
Right, and I agree with that 100%. It's not hard to get started, but it is hard to become a master.
Now, if you were gonna have future hopes for this one day, or do you plan on opening up your own maybe shop in your local town, or do you just want to stick to online basis?
So my goal is not to make 100% unique knives, and that's kind of against the grain. I want to get H&S knives into the hands of as many people as possible. So that means that as I grow in this thing, I want to move towards a production level. So I still want to make high quality knives. I still want to make the best knives on the market. But my goal is to get them into the hands of as many people as possible. So that means that as I move forward, I'll start looking into like water jet. So I have 25 knife blanks cut out at a time and sent to me for me to crank out. I'll start looking into having CNC handles and stuff, and still use all these same high quality materials, but really gear myself towards production, because I want to get this. I want this to blow up, and I want to get it. I want to grow this as much as I can.
Well, you want people to that are using a knife to know that it's made by Justin. You know what I mean? It's
Right, and it's not even necessarily about that. It's every knife that I make is getting to go and live a life of its own. It's almost like I get to be a part of all these adventures that people are having. And I said it on my Instagram story. I make heirloom quality knives for hardworking people. I want a knife that's nice enough that I could pass down, that people could pass down to their kids. Just like deer rifles are super special. I remember I still own the rifle that I shot my first deer with. I want a knife that can have that level of uh, of uniqueness, and to have that story that goes with it. Like just like that Swiss Army knife that I was given to as a kid. I still remember that. I want a knife that can be that special.
How fascinated are your parents or just your family in general with the fact that you make your own knives?
They're super supportive. I would not be here without them. Uh, not even close. My parents are not much entrepreneurs, but they instilled in me everything that I had to be a great one. My dad and my mom have always taught me to have integrity and to work my butt off, and it's served me well in this space.
I feel like if something breaks in the kitchen, your mom's like, "Oh, I can't cut your sandwich because my knife broke." You're like, "I'll be right back," and you just come back 5 minutes later. You're like, "Here you go, fixed it."
No, my mom always gets mad at me because I never carry a pocket knife.
You
Like I
just
like like I'll always leave it in my vehicle or leave it in my room, and she always gets frustrated with me because I don't carry a pocket knife.
There's no more sense of being a man than carrying a knife on your hip. I don't know
Right,
what
and
it is, and I don't know why, but I remember for last year for Christmas, I asked my buddy, "Can you get me this giant ass buck knife?" He's like, "What?" It's this thing that literally needs a sheath that's probably the length of a person's femur. Like you can't sit down with that. And
right, yeah,
he's like, "You're
that's
not a
super cool.
yeah." He's like, "You're not a cowboy," but I'm like, "It just looks badass."
Yeah, absolutely, dude. That's sweet. Shoot, I forgot what I was gonna say.
I have no reason to ever use it though. It just kind of hangs in my room. Like if a zombie apocalypse ever happens, I can just immediately pull out. Like I was prepared all along.
Yeah, they laughed at me, but I'll show them.
Who's laughing now, Mom? I feel like there's just way too much stuff out there that needs to be re-explored. I definitely think that with something like making your own knife or even anything in general when it comes to lost arting, even writing, I could say. I mean, even though it's tasking process, these are things that are going to be beneficial because I feel like too many times nowadays we're exploring new technology, new things to keep us occupied, video games. It's all amazing stuff, but it's really taking out a lot of creativity. I feel like a lot of it's just putting us on autopilot.
Yeah, and it's disconnecting us from our world. Here's a part of the story that I didn't tell: is I used to be really into video games. Um, that's how I would spend my evenings. Not unlike a bunch of other teenage guys, but I would get done with the day, and I would go and spend 3 hours playing video games. One of my favorites was Minecraft. I love that game, and I was on this server that I just spent all this time invested in making making I guess my castle or whatever on the server, and the server shut down, and all that work that I put into it was gone, just like that. And I realized it's like that didn't matter. It was the process that I was interested in. I was interested in getting to go and make. So I had already started the knife making at that point, and that's when I decided to get serious with it. And I started sinking as much time as I could into learning this because I could be proud of a knife that I made, and I could go and hand that to someone. Whereas I could never be proud of what I accomplished in a video game because at the end of the day, it was not real.
Yeah, plus if the power goes out, like you still have the knife process there. You know what I mean?
Right?
You don't lose any of your content.
Right? Yeah.
I feel like that there's so much left to understand about these types of things too. And I really appreciate you coming out and doing the podcast, Justin. I mean, you didn't have to. I know I reached out. You're probably like, what's this guy DMing me about a samurai sword? Like, what's going on?
No, I love this, and I already messaged you earlier. I said I just love being able to tell people about what I do and how I do it, and I'll gladly take up any offers for podcasts in the future. This is fun for me.
Well, please promote your Etsy page and everything where people can find your content too. I want people to be able to see your knives and maybe order one for themselves.
Sure thing. My Etsy page is at Hammer and Spear Knives. There's not anything on it right now because I sold out. I'm going to be making more inventory in the next year. So if you want one of my knives, you can find me on Instagram at Hammer and Spear _knives. I do custom orders for the time being. If you want a custom knife, reach out to me through DMs, or every now and then I'll have one that I just make for fun, and I'll put it available, and you can snatch it up there.
Well, thanks so much, Justin, for being on this episode of Out of the Blanket. Stay tuned for our next episode.